When you are young, life feels like a performance. You worry about what people think. You worry about whether you're successful enough. You worry about whether you're falling behind everyone else. Many young people spend years trying to prove that they are doing life the right way. But something interesting happens when you talk to people who have lived 70 years or more. They begin to tell you something that younger people rarely expect. Most of the things you worry about today will slowly lose their importance. Not because life becomes meaningless, but because you finally understand what truly matters. Older people often describe aging in a surprising way. They say that while the body may slow down, the mind becomes clearer. And that clarity reveals something powerful. Many of the things we spend our youth worrying about were never worth our energy in the first place. Today, we're going to explore 10 things people over 70 say they stopped caring about. And if you're young, these lessons might save you years of unnecessary stress. When you're young, other people's opinions can feel incredibly powerful. You might worry about how you look, what people think about your career, or whether your choices make sense to everyone around you. Many young adults shape their lives around approval. Approval from friends. Approval from family. Approval from coworkers and strangers. But people who have lived long lives often laugh when they talk about this. Because after 70 years, they realize something simple. Most people are too busy worrying about their own lives to judge yours. A man in his 70s once said something that stayed with me. He said, "I spent the first half of my life worrying about what everyone thought of me. Then I realized something funny. Most of them weren't thinking about me at all." When you stop chasing approval, something unexpected happens. You begin to feel free. Free to make decisions based on your values instead of someone else's expectations. When you're young, it can feel important to look impressive. You want people to see your success. You want them to admire your lifestyle, your career, or your achievements. Social media has made this even stronger. People carefully display the best parts of their lives. The promotions, the vacations, the accomplishments. But older people often look back and realize something important. Trying to impress everyone is exhausting, and it rarely leads to real happiness. A retired teacher once said that the moment she stopped trying to impress people was the moment she finally felt comfortable being herself. Authenticity replaced performance, and life became much lighter. Many young adults constantly compare themselves to others. Someone else seems to have a better job. Someone else seems to be making more money. Someone else appears to have their life perfectly figured out. This comparison can quietly steal your peace. But when you talk to people in their 70s and 80s, you often hear the same perspective. Life rarely follows a straight timeline. Some people succeed early and struggle later. Others struggle early and flourish later. Many people who appeared successful at 30 were completely lost by 50. And many who felt behind in their 20s built fulfilling lives decades later. Older generations understand something younger people often forget. Life is not a race. It's a journey that unfolds differently for everyone. When you're younger, being right can feel extremely important. You defend your opinion strongly. You argue to prove your point. You want people to acknowledge that you were correct. But after decades of life, many people realize that most arguments accomplish very little. A man in his late 70s once said something simple but wise. He said, "I used to fight every battle. Now I choose my peace instead." Because winning an argument rarely improves a relationship. And sometimes the cost of being right is losing something more valuable. With age comes the understanding that not every disagreement deserves your energy. When you're young, small frustrations can ruin your entire day. Traffic, delays, minor mistakes, unexpected problems. These things can feel overwhelming when you're busy building your life. But older people often develop a different perspective. They have lived through larger challenges, loss, health struggles, financial hardship. Life's bigger storms give them a clearer understanding of what truly matters. So when something small goes wrong, they simply shrug, because they know that most inconveniences disappear quickly, and they are rarely worth the emotional energy we give them. Many young people feel enormous pressure to look perfect. Perfect body, perfect clothes, perfect lifestyle. Society constantly sends the message that appearance determines value. But people over 70 often say something surprising. Eventually, the need to look perfect fades away. Confidence replaces perfection. A woman in her 80s once said, "When I was 25, I worried about every wrinkle. Now, I'm just grateful to still be here." With age, health becomes more important than appearance. Comfort becomes more important than fashion. And authenticity becomes more beautiful than perfection. Young people often struggle with saying no. They want to be helpful. They want to avoid disappointing others. They want to keep everyone happy. But older adults often say that trying to please everyone is one of the fastest ways to lose yourself. Because when you constantly prioritize everyone else's expectations, you slowly ignore your own needs. One 75-year-old man explained it perfectly. He said, "It took me 50 years to learn that protecting your time is not selfish. With age comes the courage to set boundaries, and boundaries protect the life you want to live." In youth, status can feel incredibly important. Job titles, expensive possessions, recognition from others. These things can make people feel successful. But when people look back after 70 years, many realize something surprising. Status rarely creates lasting fulfillment. A former executive once admitted that he spent decades chasing promotions. But when he retired, those titles meant very little. What mattered were the people he loved, the friendships he maintained, the memories he created. Status fades. Relationships remain. Fear of failure stops many young people from trying things they truly want. Starting a business, changing careers, pursuing creative passions. They wait for the perfect moment. But older people often say the same thing again and again. The things they regret most are not the failures. The real regret is the chances they never took. A 79-year-old woman once said, "The mistakes I made taught me something. The dreams I ignored taught me nothing." Failure may hurt in the moment, but regret can last a lifetime. When you're young, you often believe that if you plan carefully enough, life will follow your blueprint. You create timelines, goals, expectations for how your future should unfold. But life rarely follows those plans perfectly. Older generations understand this deeply. Unexpected events shape every life. Careers change. Relationships evolve. Circumstances shift in ways no one can predict. Eventually, many people discover that trying to control everything only creates stress. Acceptance brings peace. When you learn to adapt rather than control, life becomes far less overwhelming. Many young people believe aging is mostly about losing things. Losing youth, losing energy, losing opportunities. But older people often describe something different. They say aging also brings freedom. Freedom from unnecessary worries. Freedom from constant comparison. freedom from the pressure to prove yourself to everyone else. Because after decades of experience, clarity begins to replace confusion. You begin to see which problems were temporary, which worries were exaggerated, and which things truly deserved your attention. Many people who reach their 70s describe something unexpected. Life begins to feel lighter, not because life becomes easier, but because they stop carrying worries that never truly mattered. They no longer feel the need to impress everyone. They no longer compare their lives with others. They no longer chase things that bring only temporary satisfaction. Instead, they focus on simple but meaningful things. Conversations with loved ones, moments of peace, experiences that create lasting memories. And in many ways, that clarity becomes one of the greatest gifts of a long life. If you are young, the goal is not to rush toward old age. But there is something valuable you can borrow from those who have already traveled much further down the road. Their perspective, their clarity, their wisdom. You don't have to wait 70 years to realize what truly matters. You can begin today. Let go of the pressure to impress everyone. Stop measuring your life against someone else's timeline. Protect your time, your peace, and your relationships. Because one day, when you look back on your life, you may discover the same truth many older people eventually understand. Life becomes much more meaningful when you stop worrying about things that were never truly important.